pretty much all of us are dealing with a problem that's become the background of our everyday lives. Emails. So many emails. You need an email to do practically everything, from opening a bank account to buying clothes online. And once you've handed over that address, we all know what comes next. The flood of marketing emails, update emails, newsletters. It's impossible to keep up with and seemingly impossible to avoid. Wirecutter senior staff writer Caitlin Wells set out to do something about that. She joined me to talk about her journey to manage her inbox, and she has some tips for how you can manage yours. This is Terms of Service. I'm CNN tech reporter Claire Duffy. My conversation with Caitlin after this short break. Well, Caitlin Wells, thanks for doing this.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here.
So to start, I want to ask if you are an inbox zero person, as in, are you a person who always tries to have zero unread emails in your inbox?
I am not an inbox zero person. I treat my inbox as a running to-do list. Mm-hmm. So unfortunately, it's never going to hit the zero mark.
Yeah, I at one time was an inbox zero person, and I have long since given that up because it felt impossible. So let's start with a sort of big overview here. Why are companies sending us so many emails these days?
Well, everybody's vying for our attention, right? There's social media, the internet, TikTok, our phones, work, family, friends. There's just a lot of input, and they're trying to find a way to make that connection because, marketing psychology tells us that the greater the exposure, the more likely you are to follow through with something. So they're just, following that advice by connecting with us through our emails.
It so often feels like this is something that we don't have any control over. Like you want to buy something, certainly online, but even now many times in person, and you are asked to hand over your email or given no choice. And I feel like so often I click the do not subscribe me to marketing emails box, and you nonetheless get marketing emails. Like, is that your sense of this too?
Yeah, it really is. And that's because there's a little trick to it. Actually, there's a difference between marketing emails and transactional emails. So they kind of like skirt the rules that way. If it's like, oh, we have to remind you, it's like, I need to get my dog's nails trimmed. I need that email reminder. But then they're like, oh, by the way, here's a coupon for, next off your upcoming service. So that's why you'll get a sense that you're getting so many, because they tend to differentiate between those marketing and transactional emails. But each time you interact with them, that can in turn put you on yet another list that they have.
Are there some industries that are worse offenders in terms of sending more of these emails?
I would definitely say retail and e-commerce are some of the biggest offenders. There's always stock to move, a sale to be had, right? So there's always that like, oh, you need to get it now or you're going to miss out on it later.
That drives me crazy. I look at something for 2 seconds, a piece of clothing online, and then immediately I get an email that's like, this is low in stock. We're going to run out if you don't buy it. And then you get 7 of those emails. Like, no, you weren't. You weren't low on stock.
Yeah, it's that scarcity tactic that they like to deploy.
Are the credit card companies in on this too? Because I find that sometimes like I'll eat at a restaurant and I'll pay with my credit card, and then all of a sudden I'm getting emails from that restaurant and I don't exactly know why.
Yeah, so what typically happens there is it has to deal with the point of sale merchant, like Square, Shopify, Toast. What they do is they partner with a restaurant or a retailer. And when you elect to have a digital receipt, you're granting them access to your email, right? Or your phone number. From there, with Square, for example, if you completed a purchase with a restaurant even 10 months ago, that restaurant can still email you today because they have a terms of service that allows them to contact you within 12 months.
Do we have any data on whether companies are actually getting return on their investment from sending all of these emails, sometimes multiple emails in a day or a week?
Yes, it's definitely exposure, right? The more that you learn about something or hear about something through word of mouth, the more likely you are to engage with it or make that purchase. And when it comes to email marketing, the return on investment is incredibly high and it's cost effective. For the average marketing campaign, the ROI can sit around $36 for every dollar they put in.
Wow.
Yeah. And for retail and e-commerce alone, that's around, $40 or $45. But I've seen some email marketing providers who listed above $70 for every dollar they put in. So it's incredibly cheap and it's incredibly effective and fast. And those retailers, they own their lists. They own that connection to you, unlike, say, a traditional television campaign.
Why do you think having a cluttered inbox creates such stress for people?
I see it no different than a full dirty kitchen sink or a messy dining room table, right? Too much clutter can be incredibly stressful. Nobody wants to be disorganized forever. Some people can handle that disorganization quite well, like me when it comes to my cluttered inbox. But when I clean off that dining room table, just this relief washes over me. And to some extent, I get that as well with every email I delete or open and read.
So as a solve to this, we've seen these services pop up, unsubscribe services that offer to step in and unsubscribe you from emails or block certain emails that you don't want to be getting so that you don't have that clutter. How do these services work on the back end? What are they actually doing, or what do they say they're doing?
Essentially, with email unsubscribe services, you sign up for an account, you grant them access to your email client, and then they go through and they make a decision on how they're going to interact with it. They can either try to unsubscribe you from the email by sending an email on your behalf or virtually clicking that unsubscribe link in the footer of your message. They can create a rule or filter where those emails get funneled into a subfolder or into your trash bin, or they'll deploy their own internal blocking system where it has to feed from the marketing campaign through them. They block it so it doesn't enter your inbox at all.
And from your research, do these tools actually work?
Unfortunately, they don't work. They want to work.
They want to work.
They want to work. They're trying to solve a problem, but they're essentially doing what anybody can do on their own without disclosing their data to yet another third party.
And are these services mostly paid, and what's the sort of price range for these things?
It's going to vary. There are some who don't charge you a fee, but they're getting access to more of your data. And that data in your email can be your name, age, gender, purchasing habits, sometimes even the state or city that you live in. And for the paid services, the prices can range from about $9 to $15 a month or $200 annually. And those typically don't retain much of your data.
Talk a little bit more about the potential risks or threats of having your data in the hands of third parties like this.
It's with anything. It's with your doctor's office, your alumni association, even your employer. The more people who have access to your data, the more likely it is to be accessed by unscrupulous third parties. Everyone's doing everything they can to keep our information secure, but one bad faith actor or one, the wrong server that goes down or the wrong person hacks into an email client, that's putting you at risk. So I'm very much of the mindset, limit your access to only those who truly need it. And in the case of email unsubscribe services, there is a way that you can do this yourself. It's going to take a little bit more time and effort, but if you're capable, then I say go for it.
When we come back, how can you go about manually unsubscribing from marketing emails yourself and try to stay sane in the process? Plus, we'll talk about the laws that are already on the books to curb this overflow of emails and why they may not be enough. That's after the break. So whether or not we put these unsubscribe services into play, are we just sort of stuck in this whack-a-mole situation of receiving and deleting emails forever? Is there a sign that maybe companies will slow down their email game?
I don't see them slowing down anytime soon. As I mentioned, the ROI is really high. It's really effective. I can tell you that the majority of email providers have determined that the sweet spot is 2 to 4 emails a month, right? So they can still stay engaged with their, potential buyers. But if everybody's sending 2 to 4 emails a month, that can get overwhelming quickly.
That's so many emails. Are there any guardrails in place in terms of how many or what kinds of emails brands can send to consumers?
In the US, there's not really a set rule on how many emails can be sent through the CAN-SPAM Act, which was passed in 2003. What it does do, however, is specify how you can reach out to people, which means you can't use deceptive means. You need to send it from an email address that's legitimate and clearly identifies yourself. The subject line can't be misleading, and you need to have a clear way that somebody can opt out of those communications.
What I thought was so interesting reading your reporting on this was that 2003 Spam Act linked together spam emails with pornography, right? Like, I feel like that is just so telling about how people feel about these kinds of emails.
Yes, most definitely.
What about privacy regulation that has been passed in places like Europe or California? Is that helping to make any headway on this issue?
So when it comes to California's Privacy Act, it has it situated where it's still an opt-out system like the rest of the United States with CAN-SPAM, but they take it a step further where if you ask to be removed, they need to do it swiftly and just completely wipe your information from their database. So that's a good thing. You do have the right to remove and protect your data in that sense. When we're talking about European laws, they have a strict opt-in policy, which means you can't just capture that email address just because I, had a lobster dinner 2 weekends ago, right? You have to proactively opt in to receive those emails and then, of course, follow a similar structure with avoiding those deceptive practices.
Based on your research and sort of what we've been talking about, you've determined that the best course of action here is just doing this manually, just going through and unsubscribing from the emails. Do you have advice about the best way to do that?
Yeah, it's really, you just have to set aside this time to do it. And I would say the easiest step is to go through those emails and just hit unsubscribe. Many email clients now have it where you can just hover over the subject line of an email and a little button will pop up that says unsubscribe. And it'll send an email on your behalf, similar to the unsubscribe services that I tested, asking you to be removed from their listservs. From there, you can go into your email client settings and set up a rule or filter that says any email from X provider or mentions Y subject line, that goes to the trash bin. And then, of course, you need to remember to empty your trash bin on a regular basis.
Yeah, the rule piece sounds really helpful because I also feel like I've had the experience where I've gone and clicked the unsubscribe button like 3 different times for the same provider. So maybe that's a point at which then you just create the rule and say, send that person to the spam filter or to the trash filter automatically.
Right. And when you create that rule filter, you can have it show up every email that matches that rule that's in your email client right now. And then you can mass delete it that way without having to go back and request it to do it later.
One step that you mentioned is also creating an email alias. Will you tell me more about that?
So an email alias, it's basically creating a phony email address that you can hand out, say if you want to subscribe to a newsletter or, click a coupon, right? Without giving your personal email address. So they end up sending you an email to that alias, and that's all they have access to. So you can quickly get yourself out of there if you wanted to. You could deactivate that alias. You could delete it entirely if you wanted to, and they would never know. So you can get in and out, and that way your main inbox stays protected.
Interesting. So it still comes to your main inbox or like a folder within your inbox, but it's just easier to delete and remove yourself because it's not actually your email address.
Right. It's easier to delete and remove. And what I like about email aliases is if you see an email from a service or provider that you don't recognize, depending on the email alias, you can determine the source from that. So say like I have a Gmail account called Caitlin@gmail.com. If I add a plus symbol after my name with the word shopping after it and hand that out as the alias, then I know it came from a retailer that I signed up for. Or I can specify, this one says Macy's. It's like, oh, I've gotten an email from a floor cleaning brand, but it has the Macy's extension. So clearly Macy's passed along my info to somebody else. I'm not saying Macy's does that.
Yeah.
But
Well, that was also sort of a question for me. Like, is it worth just creating an entirely separate email that is just sort of like your marketing spam email inbox? But it sounds like aliases are a way to maybe do that without having to create a separate inbox.
yes, they're a way without creating a separate inbox, but keep in mind you're still funneling messages into your main inbox. So it's going to make that inbox 0, ideal a little bit harder to reach. But if you're somebody who isn't that great with maintaining multiple inboxes across clients, then an alias can be a good solution. And from there, you can create that ruler filter that sends all the alias emails into a subsection on your main email client.
How accessible are these steps for people who are using mainstream email services like Gmail or Outlook? Because something else I notice is that the more your inbox fills up on those services, the more they have a chance to maybe offer you to pay for an upgrade for more storage.
They do offer that option to pay for an upgrade. And it's really easy, though, to go back through your emails and perform a search for files that have large attachments. It's also counting every large attachment that you've sent to somebody. So a lot of people miss that. I miss that sometimes myself. So I make sure I go through and delete my sent emails even.
Interesting.
Yeah, there's a lot of data hiding in there that people forget about.
Any other advice for people who are trying to achieve inbox 0 or just clean up their inbox?
I say take it one step at a time. It can be intimidating, especially if you have hundreds of emails that are sitting unread, which is something I'm unfortunately guilty of. But it can happen. It's going to take you a couple of days to kind of like sort through everything. Don't get discouraged, especially if you've unsubscribed and things haven't trickled down yet, because that's CAN Spam Act. Users have about 10 business days before they need to like fully automate that process for you and remove you off their list. So don't be discouraged if it's not happening right away. If you ultimately decide that it's not worth it, I can't do this myself, then yes, you can look into those unsubscribe services. It's just be prepared for what you're giving up for in return.
Since you've been reporting on this, is your inbox in a better place?
It is not. It has gotten worse, I would say. I do implement the alias rule and the hidden email rule a lot more frequently now. And it has definitely helped on cutting down on some of like that retail clutter if I just want to cut a coupon. But, as a journalist and a working parent and an author, like there's just so many emails coming in that I need access to. So I haven't achieved that yet. Do as I say, not as I do.
Well, we're all in this together.
Yes, we are.
Caitlin, thank you so much. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Whether or not you are able to achieve inbox 0, maybe it's comforting to know that even someone who has done deep reporting on these tools is still overwhelmed by her emails too. That said, the next time you have 10 minutes, it could be worth taking a look at your inbox and making some headway with that unsubscribe button. You could first search for a specific term, maybe you were shopping for furniture but now you're not, and unsubscribe from all the providers who pop up in that search. Or, if you want to take it a step further, use your existing email provider to set up an email alias. It's like another email address that you'll only use for marketing emails. Those emails will still show up in your main inbox, but you can easily delete or hide the alias if those emails get to be too much. That's it for this week's episode of Terms of Service. I'm Claire Duffy. Talk to you next week.